In the last section, we looked at a fairly complex cognitive task, the prospective memory task of making an appointment. Now we're going to have a look at a relatively simple, more perceptual cognitive task, and that task is the sort of puzzle you sometimes see, for example, in a newspaper. What's the difference between these two pictures, or what are the differences between these two pictures? The cortical model we'll use will include visual receptive fields at a complexity able to discriminate between different groups of visual objects, and also an area which can discriminate between situations in which two separate populations in that visual area have a lot of overlap, in other words, lots of the same columns active in both populations, and situations where there's less overlap between the two populations. In solving the task, the gaze moves back and forth between the two pictures, fixating on corresponding positions in the two pictures. So suppose the gaze fixates on the region indicated in green, the face of the worker. Receptive fields are detected within that area. And recall, this involves frequency modulation of the outputs of the primary visual area to drive more complex receptive field detections in higher visual areas. The activity of these receptive fields is prolonged. And of course, remember that involves creation of short-term receptive fields in other cortical areas. Then the gaze shifts to the corresponding region in the other picture. Receptive fields are detected within these new visual inputs. Now the picture in the two regions is the same, so the population of receptive field detections will also be pretty much the same. The next step is to release the outputs from the two populations in the visual area to the comparison area, driving receptive field detections in that area. These receptive fields are different from the ones that will be detected if the images were different in the attention region. So these receptive fields can recommend behaviors appropriate for detecting no difference. Next, attention is focused on a different part of the image, and in this case there are differences between the two pictures. Receptive fields are detected in response to the attention being focused on the first image. These are prolonged, and attention shifts to the corresponding region in the second picture. Receptive field detections occur in response to this second picture, the region of the second picture, and in this case there is much less overlap, or less overlap, between the receptive field detection populations from the two images. These two populations are released to the comparison area, and they drive receptive field detections in this comparison area. Now, these receptive field detections are different from the detections if the two regions were identical. So these latest receptive fields are appropriate for recommending behaviors in response to detecting a difference. Now note that this task required a sequence of steps: attention behaviors, prolongation behaviors, release behaviors, and finally speech and muscle movements in exactly the right order. And these sequences of steps could have been coded in the cerebellum as a result of similar tasks in the past and invoked in this situation.